immersed themselves, learned the lessons of unlearning some of the things or learning things they didn't learn at IIM, and then we prefer recruiting them. We also find that recruiting people with a liberal arts education creates a competitive situation where the IIMs and the liberal arts education actually do compete with each other a lot. And there are times when the liberal arts education wins hands down, because the problem with the IIM education often is the emphasis on communication is limited. The emphasis on really connecting the dots and being able to convince someone is still limited, though it's actually better than probably most of the institutions in India. It is not good on those 2 or 3 dimensions. Thinking outside the box, really outside the box, is limited. It's much more structured, and this is not a structured world we are in.
So you...
Go ahead.
All the comments you made about disruption is about...
Can I just request that we have people here to help with the mics, so if the mics can be given to them, and then can you just state your name and which IIM and where you work, and then ask the question. That way we'll get to know who's there in the audience too.
I'm Nandu Kuswami. I am Ahmedabad, IIM-Connect. One of the comments you made about disruption is about creating a culture of fear. That really struck me as something which is very different from what I've heard and learned all through my life. That innovation comes through a place where there is no fear. Just the paradigm is very different. So I would like to know why you were thinking that fear is a necessary component.
No, so you're right. I think fear in that context is wrong. So when you create an environment where fear becomes addictive, if you know what I mean. So when you create an environment where the fact that there is going to be complete change, you could either make it fear where you're fearing death, or fear where you're saying, guys, let's just dive into this. And so you're right. I mean, the fear of the kind you described is not what I was describing. That's not the objective. It's positive fear, if there is such a thing. It's really the thrill of the ride kind of fear. Sorry? The adrenaline rush, maybe, yeah. So I mean, actually, the metaphor of the roller coaster ride is not a bad metaphor. After all, there is fear right at the top of the dive down. But at the end, I mean, the reason why people ride the roller coaster is because they love the ride down, even though it creates a pit in the stomach. So it's that kind of.
Ram here, IIM Bangalore. I think I will take off from the comment from there. Disruptive thoughts, together with disruptive changes in the organization that you are putting together, together with the question of having curiosity, the CQ that you're talking about, kind of puts a spin which is uncomforting for an employee, right? The employee starts looking at my curiosity, if it's edges on the side that the organization is not looking at, I'm going to be edged out. So how do you balance these two factors when you talk to your employees?
So it's very important. So you have to have a culture where making a mistake is actually rewarded, not forgiven. So you gotta have, I mean, there's no option. I mean, if you go to the startup world, where's Narsimhan, right? Great. I mean, I'm sure if I'm going to say this and you'll agree with me, in the startup world, mistakes are rewarded because the more mistakes you make, you learn and then move on to the next one. Fast failures, I mean, that's a term that is used. So you go in a large organization, it's very tough to do that, but if you don't do that, then all the behaviors that you talked about crops up. It takes time to do it. You got to drive it. It has to be driven from the top. There's no option, because if you don't, then people won't come up with those ideas, and if they do and they fail, and if you then eject them, that won't work. It's a great point.
Vivek Gupta at IIM Ahmedabad. So organizations make money by doing large amounts of repetitive work. Most of the companies make money by doing large amounts of repetitive work. So, in that situation, it's very difficult to, balance disruption in the organization. It's not easy, and not everybody is going to be disrupted. So the bulk of the money still comes from the they're doing the same thing again and again and again.
So I understand what you're saying, right, but I'm not so sure that that's a good way to describe today's great large organizations. The great large organizations of today, I think, have a dual speed world within themselves. One which says, here's something that has worked. I'm now going to repeat it again and again and again, to your point. But it's waiting for the next signal to change. That next signal comes from another part of the organization that is constantly trying to figure out the next new thing that needs to get repeated. So you're right. I don't think in large organizations you can have the whole organization spinning around with one speed. And let's say it's the disruptive speed. I don't think that will work because then you're not going to be able to scale up. I suspect the correction that I would make to what I said and what you're saying is that you end up therefore having to manage a two-speed world without creating dissonance between those two worlds, and the two need to mesh. One which is this innovation and disruption and thriving in that, and the other which then takes it and repeats it again and again. But the cycle of that is just dramatically different. The speed of that change. So this repeat and continue, I don't know if it's one of those where you do something and it's going to last for a long time. I don't know how long these disruptions last, actually. People are now saying, I was fascinated on this trip, when people said Salesforce.com is an old legacy company. Yeah, I know. The people in the Bay Area probably are the people who are the first to react saying, of course it is. And I'm saying, really? And that's not the way I would have thought of it. But apparently it is.
Because I run actually innovation group. I'm the chief innovation officer in the company, and most of the clients, they talk about innovation a lot, but it's very hard.
Very hard.
Very hard to even go and change solutions. So it's not. We can talk, and most of the innovations either hit them, but it's very difficult to change the large organizations. I find it.
So Vivek, the math shows that. If you look at the S&P 500 over the last, some 20 years, the number of S&P 500 companies or the Dow Jones companies who are the same have dramatically become much smaller. And two, the rate at which companies come in and then die and get out is the cycle of that is shortening dramatically. So it's very easy, I think, to agree with you and say that it's very likely that the S&P 500 companies today, 10 years from now, 80% of them will not be in the S&P 500. 80%. So which means a bunch of us, whoever in the room, is part of large organizations. It's very likely that we will be somewhere else because those organizations will not be there. For exactly the reason you just said. So at some level, it is a scary word.
Yeah, because it's culturally a misfit. I've seen.
Yeah.
If innovation is actually a misfit in a profit-oriented company, it's not so easy to fit it. You can fit it into Bay Area companies.
Yeah.
But if you're a servicing company, it's not easy. It's a disruption. It's a disruption to day-to-day job. It's a disruption to large number of teams.
Yeah. Yeah, it's disruption to power structure, it's destroying your own work, it's destroying your own idea, business, etc., etc. So one of the models that some companies and some industries have adopted, I think the pharma companies are trying to move in the direction of, I can't innovate everything, and I will not. The Cisco's of the world went there quite some time back. And therefore, I'm going to create options where I'm going to play the option game and have a bunch of people innovating. And they have the environment, they have the people, they have the excitement and all of that, and they have the funding for it as well. And then I'm going to reel them in, depending on success, failure. And then when I reel them in, I hopefully will not smother them to death, which is a different problem. Go ahead.
As a senior executive, I want to know your opinion about what's happening, say, for example, with Walmart, right? They have to, Priya Ramanathan from IIM Calcutta, 2004 batch. So they have to do it or they're going to die, right, in order to survive. So will they be able to do it? Walmart moving to the e-com, trying to compete with Amazon.
I mean, I don't know how to react to that. I don't know.
No,
I mean, I
the
wouldn't claim I know Walmart enough to be
idea is
able to
good,
react.
but the challenge is the big organization. Will they be able to do?
There-
Conceptually, it's good,
There-
but will they be
there
able
are
to
s-
recruit
I mean, there are
people
clearly
like
organizations
Amazon?
who are going to do it. I mean, just because you're big doesn't mean, let's remember, when you're big, you have lots of dollars available. Right? I mean, the challenge that companies have when they're small, apart from the value where there's enough venture capital and froth money available, but otherwise for large companies versus smaller companies in that group, the reality is large companies have lots of dollars that they can set aside, billions, and as long as they create the culture, they can do it. I would argue that on the face of it, without knowing anything, I would argue why wouldn't Walmart be able to do it? Just as GE has just decided in the last 3 or 4 years to stand up and say that we are not just an industrial company, we are a digital industrial company. We will be a software company.
So I was alluding to that. Is that money alone enough? Even if they, theoretically, the concept is good, will they be able to execute it? Execution is
Not-
also going to be a big challenge.
I agree. Therefore, the failure rate is going to be high. But there will be successes. There will be successes. For
And
sure.
Since you had the big organization, I just want to get your opinion about the probability of Walmart.
We do not have Walmart as a client.
Buy the stock or hold.
We do not have Walmart as a client. We would love to have Walmart as a client. So therefore, even if I have an opinion, I wouldn't reveal it here. Sorry, let me finish.
I'm Johnny and I'm Bangalore batch of 92. So I work in Wall Street, and one of the things that you said kind of stuck me at my core because I work with analytics to pick up companies, and I'm not trying to promote any model or anything like that. But what stuck me is most of Wall Street is so concentrated on the next earning and the EPS and things like that, and that's what they try to predict to pick their next stock. But over the years, one of my most successful models is it works in a very different way, nothing to do with the financials of the company, but it picks at companies which are quote unquote innovators, and innovators not just simply by R&D or technology front, but innovators because things are changing in the business function. And in the last 10 odd years that I've been tracking it, it's by far the most successful model in terms of its consistency and the value add, simply because it's looking at things that most of Wall Street it's not really picking up, and it's just concentrating on innovation. So this was just my personal experience that I wanted to share. This is really, really big, and most people tend to miss it in the short run.
So therefore, all of us should talk to you. We'll talk to you a lot.
No,
And
absolutely
get all the best.